hard to know exactly what is all laddering up to what we then ultimately see on the website. What we do know, though, is that, in the U.S. and some other countries around the world, they've started calling for investigations into their labor practices and wanting to really cut down on Shein's presence in the country.
Tell me about some of the criticisms about sustainability and what it means to have very, very, very fast, very, very, very cheap fashion.
There is no way that you can make these clothes at this volume in a way that's sustainable. I think a lot of companies, and this is across fashion, it's not just Shein, they look at regenerative or organic cotton. They look at alternative materials that put, less plastic out into the wash whenever you wash them. Shein could overhaul its entire material source, but at the end of the day, if they are still producing at the volume that they're producing at, it's never going to be sustainable. It outpaces the amount of production that could ever be healthy for the planet and within planetary boundaries. They've been hit with lawsuits around the toxic lead that is found in their products and the amount of carbon emissions that their facilities produce. And then you bring in the human rights issues in the supply chain from top to bottom. It's not a sustainable company. Fashion is not a sustainable industry as a whole, but Shein is basically as far as you can get.
When you look at survey and polling data, you find that Generation Z cares more about sustainability than older generations. They're really concerned with climate change. How does Shein hold on to them if it's doing things that are documented as really bad for the planet?
I think what it comes down to is no matter who you are, the allure of cheap, trendy clothing is pretty hard to resist when you don't have the means to spend on more expensive fashion. And I think over time, clothing itself has become separated from quality. That's just not what people buy clothing for. They're not thinking about what can last. They're thinking about what they'll look the best wearing and what event they're going to and what they need a new outfit for. And I think where we have seen a new type of customer behavior, pattern come up with Gen Z. They are very into resale. They're very into secondhand shopping, and thrifting has gone online. And so I think people will justify new purchases by saying, oh, I can just resell it. And then that even comes down to the Shein purchase, even though ultimately these are pieces of clothing that are disposable. So it's very contradictory, and I think, it's like the hive mind versus the individual urge that's at play.
All right, this company's been around since 2008, but all of a sudden I'm reading about it everywhere. In Forbes, in Bloomberg, in the New York Times, in the Wall Street Journal, and in Vogue. Why have we hit peak Shein here? Why is everyone talking about it right now?
Where it blew up into public consciousness was on TikTok.
I spent $500 on Shine.
If you look at Shein's rise in the U.S., it's pretty in step with TikTok's. It's over the past 3 years or so, and the Shein purchase behavior is perfect for the TikTok haul.
I kinda want to do a try on haul.
So you have creators, influencers on TikTok who will buy, if you buy hundreds of dollars in Shein clothing, that's a massive haul, and then they're trying it on. The hashtag Shein haul is trending everywhere.
I heard Shein's getting banned or something, or soon or something, so I had to get my last big order in, and let's do a haul.
And I got this pink case and this pink shirt. I love it.
Now we have this houndstooth set. Obsessed with it, love it. So I have a few more things coming because I kept ordering and I couldn't stop. So there's definitely gonna be part 2.
It's kind of normalized that behavior, even though it's overconsumption kind of flying in the face of the sustainable ethos or thoughts that Gen Z is said to be having. At the same time, you have the pushback, and so that gains momentum as well, because a lot of people don't agree with Shein's behaviors, and at the same time that's gone up to lawsuits and potential congressional action against Shein as well, and which I think also goes back to the TikTok question, because we're seeing some more scrutiny around Chinese-based companies over data and privacy, and so they've already kind of brought TikTok in front of Congress for that, and so the question is Shein next?
And it wants to go public.
That's right. So there are rumors that Shein is considering an IPO, which is an initial public offering, which means that it would, be a publicly listed company on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or Wall Street, and Shein has not confirmed or commented on whether or not they actually are considering an IPO, but we do know that they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in lobbying efforts in the U.S. So far this year. There's definitely a precedent for Chinese companies doing very well in the U.S., but we'll see, I guess, if the mood changes around it and if they decide, like, oh, okay, this would really open us up to scrutiny.
Hillary Milnes of Vogue. Coming up, is Shein really stealing from designers? And if so, how is it doing it? A designer is going to walk us through it.
Whether you're searching for the latest sneaker drop, that iconic handbag, a timeless watch, or your next piece of classic jewelry, eBay authenticators are there, verifying every detail of your purchase. With years of experience, they're making sure the piece you're searching for is worthy of your collection. eBay's authenticators are experts in their craft, true connoisseurs, and as leaders in their fields, they're making sure your items always arrive as authentic as your style. In a world full of fakes, it's time to get real. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, everyone deserves real. Visit ebay.com for terms.
This episode is brought to you by Global X ETFs. Start your investing journey by exploring exchange-traded funds. Exchange-traded funds, more commonly known as ETFs, create baskets of stocks, bonds, and other assets that you can buy in a single trade. At Global X, they specialize in ETFs that track emerging technologies, like the rise of electric vehicles, as well as strategies aimed to potentially generate income, and much more. To discover how you can add ETFs to your portfolio, visit globalxetfs.com.
I'm Joanna Cosentino. I am a crochet designer where I sell my crochet plushies, accessories, and I also design clothing and then I sell the pattern. I think my designs get popular because nowadays, like, the trend, I would say, is color and expressing yourself through color. My patterns kind of they're simple, but like they are colorful and like sometimes have a fun graphic on it, and I think people like that. It was, I believe, the summer of 2021. A follower had messaged me on Instagram and they said that they were online and they saw my strawberry vest. It's like a circular kind of shape. It has mint green on it with pink trim at the bottom and like pink trim around the shoulders, and then in the middle is like a really plump red strawberry with some green leaves. And they sent me a screenshot of this strawberry vest that Shein was selling. It was mint green, pink trim, strawberry in the center, the exact same color scheme and design as mine, except it was made with like a fake knit stitch, so it was clearly mass produced with a much cheaper material. I sell the PDF pattern to make it yourself on Etsy for about $10, but if I were to make the strawberry vest by hand and sell it, I usually sell it for anywhere between $90 to $100, just based on the materials, the labor. They were selling the finished piece for $12, and obviously this wasn't actually crocheted by hand, it was a machine mock knit stitch. The fact that they were selling it for $12, which is only $2 shy of just the pattern for it, says a lot about how exploited the labor is.
That was designer Joanna Cosentino. Hillary Milnes is our co-pilot this half hour. She's an editor at Vogue Business. So, Hillary, Joanna says Shein stole a vest pattern from her. This is how I learned we're doing vests again. And they sold it for cheaper than she could. When this happens, is there ever accountability for the big company?
It's definitely not new for designers to accuse fast fashion companies of ripping off their designs, and historically the most that really happens is that the fast fashion company gets some bad press. It's very hard to kind of get any sort of copyrights around fashion IP, and this has been just a long-standing factor in the fashion industry when it comes to who owns what design.
This had been happening to like so many crocheters that I follow, like mutual designers in the community, that I wasn't surprised when they sent me this message. And then I posted on Instagram a side-by-side of the screenshot of Shein's design and my design with me wearing it next to it, and I just announced it to my followers that, hey, this happened to me. Shein is like this really shady company, like if you can, just do not support them. And the picture kind of blew up.
That said, there are some interesting nuances about the Shein lawsuit that stand out and make it feel a bit different. The most recent lawsuit, I think on the designer side, was a few coming together, and they accused Shein of being in violation of the RICO Act, which was set up, I think, in the 1970s to fight organized crime and racketeering. So this lawsuit is different in that it's not saying, look at my design, Shein ripped it off, this was a standalone offense. But it's saying that design theft is a core part of Shein's business model, basically implying that if Shein did not rip off design from other designers en masse, then Shein would have no business.
Oh, because there's no Coco Chanel. There's the design house, but there's no designer, so the brains are coming from elsewhere, more or less. In this day and age, I think you could look at this and say, this company uses technology to identify trends, and then it makes them. How does that become illegal? It seems smart.
It's not illegal on its own. We look at how many companies and design houses themselves are starting to use AI and technology to help inform the design process. So the narrative is typically, how is fashion combining art and science, and how do you get the right balance? And a lot of fashion is creating the trends, not just following them, not just repeating them. So you need to have some element of I know what my customer will want before they even want it. If you bring in too much data, then you're just going to kind of be in the same repetitive process. So Shein is not using its own customer data to inform its design trends and then bringing in exactly what you said, that designer element on top that creates something new out of what they are predicting their customer will want. It is sourcing customer data from all over the internet in order to pick up on what trends the customer will want to buy en masse as close as possible to as soon as they're wanting it. So it's reactive. It's not leading any sort of design trend. You mentioned, is it illegal? I think that's what we're going to find out whenever we see how these lawsuits go. But one thing that the recent lawsuit from the designers mentioned was that Shein was worse than TikTok in terms of how it protected or did not protect customer data and privacy, which again is notable considering TikTok was questioned by Congress in terms of how they used customer data in the US.
Okay, so this company is facing just about every kind of criticism a company can face, up and down the ladder. Has it tried to fix its reputation? Has it done any sort of public outreach?
Yeah, so I think the most notable example of Shein trying to change the narrative around its business and its practices was the June influencer trip.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, Shein flew some influencers out to a couple of their manufacturing plants. Showed them around and really fed them topics to talk about.
Getting to see the whole process of Shein clothing from beginning to end with my own two eyes was so important.
So they were showing basically how technology is such a core part of Shein. And they were very complimentary in terms of how advanced Shein was. And met some of the workers and talked about how well treated they were.
Everybody was just working like normal, chill, sitting down. They weren't even sweating.
Now I can go home feeling reassured, feeling confident in my partnership with Shein.
It looked very clean. It did not match any sort of notion of what we think a sweatshop would look like.
Shein sent influencers to its factory to show them, I guess, that they don't abuse their workers. The influencers took their PR spin for gospel and reporting back to their millions of combined followers.
The takeaway was to be, this is just a very technology advanced company. They are treating their workers well, and they are, working in environments that are very safe and friendly and, able to be toured in a very modern looking, office environment.
Okay, so all of this, and on top of that, the OG influencers, American congresspeople, are mad at Shein too.
You have select committees in Congress who are calling on Shein to change its practices and wanting to dig into these forced labor allegations, as well as looking into Shein's shipping practices into the U.S. And so the way that Shein is able to get so much volume into the U.S., they've actually found a shipping loophole. So it's called de minimis shipping, and it basically says that any company that if you're shipping goods under $800 worth of value into the U.S., they will not be taxed import taxes, and they will also not be scrutinized as much as any other retailer might be. So it's not going through customs basically in the same way. So this has really been a key mechanism for Shein when it comes to growing its business in the U.S. And I think Congress is now kind of picking up on the fact that Shein, as well as Temu, both building their businesses off of this practice.
Bulk sales from China over $800 are subject to American tariffs. But because each Shein and Temu sale is processed individually and cheap, both companies are able to sell hundreds of millions of dollars worth of clothes in the U.S. tariff-free.
I'm an old millennial, so I heard about Shein not through the TikTok or through the Insta. I actually read news stories about it and heard like this is a company that potentially is doing some terrible things. And then I went on their website and I was like, oh my God, this is so cheap. This is so trendy. And I filled up a cart and then I thought through what was happening and I closed out. I didn't buy anything. I went to LL Bean instead. And it makes me think, I mean, I am not the generation that Shein is meant to appeal to, but I wonder if you think, does the responsibility for ensuring that this company does better, does it just lie with the people who are going to go on and fill up their carts?
Absolutely not. I don't think we can expect most people to have the Shein to LL Bean cart pipeline, and I think that a lot of the thinking around customers will vote for their dollars is kind of a myth when it comes to sustainability. When your dollar just isn't going that far, and you are either believe you don't have the extra money to spend on nicer clothing, or you're just someone who's young, you're in college, and you have a lot of events that you're going to. You're constantly seen on social media. You're keeping up with your friends who are also buying the trends. Like, it just becomes such a force that you can't count on the customer to make those decisions to such an extent that it will put this company out of business. I think at the end of the day, it is going to come down to legislation, regulation, and kind of like the market forces to rewrite this company, because we just can't ask customers to take them down themselves.
Hillary Mills of Vogue, the magazine. Today's show was produced by Halima Shah, editing by Matthew Collette and Amina El Sadi, facts by Laura Bullard, engineering by David Herman and Patrick Boyd. Now, before we go, we would love it if you could help us out on a show that's going to be airing next week about this new medication for postpartum depression. If you've experienced postpartum, if you've heard about this medicine, if you have questions, we would love to hear from you. You can give us a call and leave us a message at 202-688-5944, 202-688-5944. Give us your name, tell us where you're calling from, let us know what's on your mind, 202-688-5944, and just know that we might use your voicemail in an upcoming episode. Thank you. I'm Noelle King. It's Today Explained.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Spectrum Business. Running a small business takes grit and determination, and a communications provider that's got your back. Spectrum Business keeps your business running with fast, reliable internet, all-in-one communication tools, mobile service, and more. Learn more at spectrum.com/business.
This is Planet Money from NPR.
Welcome back, everyone, to Planet Money Summer School. This season, we are using every bit of business school jargon we can think of. We're on the bleeding edge of outside-the-box thinking as we 10x our game-changing synergy. Got it? Got it. I'm Robert Smith. So far this season, we've concentrated on the basics of building a business. How do you differentiate your product from your competitors? How do you find customers and craft your sales pitch? But what if you want to dream bigger? Not just a new product, but something that can change the world and make billions of dollars. What if you want to create a tech company? This is normally the point where sleepy MBA students in the back of the classroom perk up. Did somebody say market disrupting innovation? Did somebody say billions? Yeah. Now that I have your attention, I should say that technology is more than just buzzwords and outlandish behavior. Today on the show, how to see technology as an opportunity and as a threat for a business, and some techniques entrepreneurs use to take advantage of that. It's not just about the product, it's about psychology and ethics and seeing the blind spots that bigger companies don't even know they have. That's what you learn in business school, and hopefully here. Teaching our class today is a man who has guided many a budding tech guru. Brought back in Dan Wong, a professor of strategy at Columbia Business School.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here again.
To talk about technology. So we've talked a lot about what students in an MBA program will learn about business, and oftentimes the examples are, I'm selling apples on the corner, I have a hot dog cart. But in this day and age, it seems like most of the business conundrums, the business opportunities are in technology. So when we talk about technology, how do we think about that differently? Does it fit the same business model they were teaching in the 1950s?
I would say there's a couple of general principles. I think the first one is that in an industry that's technology intensive or tends to be constantly shaped by technology, companies have to be in constant search for new competitive advantage or new sources of competitive advantage.
That's good for innovation, it's good for progress.
Certainly, but it also makes choices that much harder and that much consequential. Because there's a wider spectrum of ways to differentiate, it makes it harder to move from one choice to another once you've committed.
So you think about old-fashioned film companies like Kodak, right? They used to compete on how good their film stock was, how vibrant their colors, small improvements. But then digital photography comes along and they have to decide if they're going to completely change everything they do and become a digital company. At which point, you're going to need different products, different cameras, different factories, different workers.
You kind of have to commit to that. And so when confronted with the new technology, they're always caught in this dilemma. Do you adopt the new thing or do you go with what has traditionally worked?
And on the other hand, if you're a small startup, can you wiggle your way into the market while the big guys are hemming and hawing over whether or not to change? All right, Dan will be back with us after we listen to a case study or two. And he'll teach us more about that concept that has sold 1 million business books. The Innovator's Dilemma. Disruption after the break.
This message comes from NPR sponsor USPS. USPS Ground Advantage offers reliable and affordable 2 to 5 day package shipping. Get the Ground Advantage at USPS.com/advantage. The United States Postal Service, delivering for America.
This
Okay. I really want McDonald's. Yeah, let's go to McDonald's. It's been a day. It's been a day.
Hi, this is Trace. Are you going to be using the app today?
Yep, I'm starting it now, sorry.
Okay.
Let's see, my kiosk number is 5595.
For Russell?
Yep.
All right, honey. What can I get for you?
I'll take a number 2 meal with small orange juice. And I got a coupon for a free hash brown. And I'll also take a sausage burrito.
Hot or mild for the burrito?
Mild, please.
Okay. Can I get you anything else?
That's all.
Your total's going to be $9.47 today. Thank you.
Thanks.
On and 947, sweetie, okay? Did they pick that up? Yep, 947, please. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
I love Violet. Barney girl on me. I really love Barney. Oh. He is. Alright, he's amazing. He's so good. Your cuddle's gonna be fantastic. They're the cutest little kid I've ever met in the world. Love them. Oh my god. Hi, will you be using my phone? Thank you.
Right, thanks. Alright. Where to eat? Oof. I go to my favorite spot, my old apartments here, where I first got my start in Ohio. Fox and Hounds Apartments. Oh, the memories. There's a little dog park here. Alright, breakfast over, back to work. Oh. I'm exhausted. This used to be a good apartment complex. It's kind of run down. Changed hands. Money, money, money. We're in Oxford, Ohio. I gotta get to work in Hamilton. South Hamilton. Gonna take maybe 45 minutes maybe.
Place Border Report is supported by Grammarly. Grammarly Business empowers companies to drive faster results with secure enterprise-grade generative artificial intelligence that works where teams do. It helps businesses break down information silos, collaborate efficiently, and quickly adapt to stay competitive. Grammarly.com/business. And by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks delivers what's next in cybersecurity innovation to protect today's digital way of life. Learn more at PaloAltoNetworks.com.
For Econ Extra Credit, here it's one film a month on Marketplace Themes. This time around, it's Beanie Baby Mania. It's on the rise and fall of Beanie Babies, the plush toys that people thought had value worthy of investment. This is the documentary from 2021, not the fictionalized Beanie movie from last month. It was a bubble that was fueled by wild thoughts that, for instance, getting the right beanies could fund college or retirement. Here's a moment from the film.
There was such a frenzy. Oh gosh. Just the electricity.
They would just lunge and grab, and somebody was yelling, I need, and it would go flying across the store.
You'll start to do anything you can to quote-unquote complete your collection. That's when things got out of control.
Indeed. To this day, many people still cherish their beanies, but I spoke to a person in the film who is not in that category. Harry Rinker is an expert on antiques and collectibles who embraces the handle Beanie Meanie.
When they first came out, people didn't collect them. Then all of a sudden, they started to appear for sale on eBay at prices significantly above retail cost, okay? Then what happened is that dealers found out that if they could corner the market at stores and stuff and scarf them up, so the edition wasn't continuous, it was limited, that they could then throw this stuff on eBay and create a frenzy, a buying frenzy. And they did.
And then, you know, it's the lesson that we try to teach about so many other financial assets. Trees don't grow to the sky. You know, yes, things can go up, but they also tend to come down on the other side.
Yes, they do. So all of a sudden, supply exceeded demand. When supply exceeds demand, it's all over.
The film also explores some other interesting economic facets here. One of them is, there's the primary market for Beanie Babies, the company that made them, Ty, selling them. But then there's the other market, the one you've just been talking about, the auction market or eBay, where if a Beanie Baby goes for 10 grand, the company that made the Beanie Baby doesn't really profit.
Oh, but they do. They promote that market by restricting sales. In other words, they had a limited production run, 1 year, 2 years, and then they would go out. Well, the minute they would go out, that was like adding value to the thing. Now, did Ty benefit from that? Yes, because people would then buy future Beanie Babies in speculation that they would go up in value, so Ty would increase the runs of the later Beanie Babies. He was an incredibly smart man.
What's so interesting to me talking to you, you've thought a lot about collectibles in general, and you don't have this view on everything. Some things you might collect might be a better bet?
No. It's all risky. Collecting's about memory, right? Now, I was a big Hopalong Cassidy collector. I own one of the only complete 10 Hopalong Cassidy bedroom suites known to mankind. I paid $5,000 for it. When I sold it at auction a couple years ago, I got $300 for it. I once owned 50,000 objects, and I'm down to 20,000 at this point. But I'm going to tell you what I did every time I went and bought something for my collection. I went into the bathroom and flushed the toilet to remind me what I just did with my money.
So why'd you do it then?
Oh, because I love the goodies. You know, the question becomes, how do you know a person is a true collector? He dies with his stuff, and it's never about the money.
Harry Rinker is owner of Rinker Consulting. He's written extensively on collectibles and antiques, and he's featured in the documentary we're watching this month, Beanie Mania, sometimes known as the, quote, Beanie Meanie. Mr. Rinker, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, David.
Timing the end of any bubble is one of the great challenges of finance. That's in the extended version, streamable from our homepage. And sign up for the Econ Extra Credit weekly newsletter. Learn along with us. Marketplace.org/newsletters. It's free. I'm David Brancaccio with our morning report. From BPM, American Public Media.
It's a minute before 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is 91.7 WVXU. Clouds this morning, partly cloudy this afternoon, the high 82. It's 68. Support comes from Water Tower Fine Wines in Mount Washington, offering something new at every wine tasting. Discover more about the monthly pizza buffet, wine tastings, and keep an eye on everything new and expanded wine stations featuring 12 wines at watertowerfinewines.com with reservations by calling 513-231-9463.
Support comes from the Valley Temple, hitting the road for informal Sabbath services in the Reformed Jewish tradition, Friday, August 11th at Alco by Maturin over the Rhine. All families are welcome as they bring the joy and excitement of Valley Temple out into the community. More information is available at valleytemple.com.
91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUB Oxford. News from Cincinnati Public Radio and NPR.
Welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service. This is Owen Bennett-Jones, and on the programme today, the assassination of a presidential candidate in Ecuador. The existing president, Guillermo Lasso, has mourned the loss and said the vote must go on.
Faced with the loss of a Democrat and a fighter, the elections aren't suspended. On the contrary, they have to be held, and democracy has to be strengthened.
The Russian criminals who, after 6 months on the front line in Ukraine, are pardoned and now heading back to their villages.
Pardon, the law says, comes after reconciliation with the victim and a good report from prison. None of this happens when Wagner criminals are pardoned.
And also today, we'll hear how scientists worked out that Mars once had seasons. All coming up after the news.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. US soldiers have joined search and recovery efforts in the state of Hawaii, where a surprise wildfire fueled by winds from a nearby hurricane has left at least 36 people dead. The town of Lahaina on the island of Maui was burnt to the ground. Some residents were forced to jump into the sea to escape the flames. Firefighters in Maui are continuing efforts to get the blazes under control. Imogen James has more details.
Lahaina, the first capital of Hawaii, was home to more than 12,000 people and was a hugely popular tourist destination. But now, it sits in ruins. It's just one part of the island that has been decimated by these fires. Hurricane winds have spurred on the blazes, which are spread over 3 areas. Maui officials say the hospitals have been overwhelmed with burn patients and people suffering from smoke inhalation. Emergency shelters across the island are full as tourists try to leave Maui. The governor warned that recovery would take years as houses and businesses lay destroyed.
Ukraine has told vulnerable people living in an area close to the Russian front line that they should leave immediately because of an increase in Russian attacks. Ukraine's military had earlier said that the situation around Kupiansk was difficult but under control. Earlier, a Russian Defense Ministry spokesman, Igor Konashenkov, claimed successes in the region.
In the Kupiansk region, assault troops have made advances along the front line during offensive operations. During the day, counterattacks by the armed forces of Ukraine were successfully repelled in the Lugansk People's Republic and in the Kharkiv region.
West African leaders say dialogue with the leaders of the coup in Niger will be the bedrock of their approach to the crisis. Ahead of the meeting of the regional group ECOWAS in Nigeria, which is now underway, the Nigerian President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said the organisation was prioritising diplomacy. Andrew Harding reports.
West African leaders have been meeting behind closed doors in Nigeria, looking for ways to push neighbouring Niger back towards democracy. But in Niger itself, the leaders of the recent coup have continued to ignore outside pressure. Overnight, the military there announced a new cabinet lineup. America and the former colonial power France have several thousand troops stationed in Niger, a country that had been a pro-Western democracy. There are now growing concerns that Niger's military may turn instead to Russia and its Wagner mercenaries for support.
Tunisia and Libya say they have agreed to share responsibility for hundreds of African migrants stranded on their border. The migrants say they were forcibly bussed out of Tunisia's second city of Sfax in July and abandoned in the remote desert near the Libyan border. Some have been there for over a month without food, water or shelter. Libyan patrols say they've found a number of migrants' bodies in the desert in recent weeks. This is the latest world news from the BBC.
Good morning. It's 9:04, 68 degrees in Cincinnati, 67 in Dayton. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Marianne Zalesnik. Opponents of Issue 1 barely had time to celebrate their victory at the ballot box before they turned their attention to the next fight, an amendment planned for the November ballot that, if passed, would enshrine reproductive rights into the Constitution. State House correspondent Joe Ingles reports.
Dr. Maureen Bean, one of the doctors who's leading the charge to pass the November amendment, said work has already begun and it will ramp up now.
You know, moving forward, I think that our biggest lesson is the power of coalitions and the power of grassroots energy and the power of the people and our voices.
But it won't all be grassroots and coalitions. The fight over the abortion amendment is expected to attract a lot of attention nationwide, and groups on both sides of it expect to spend millions of dollars to to get their message out to voters. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
Governor Beshear has proposed another round of pay raises for Kentucky State Police troopers and bolster training for law officers. It's part of his budget proposals to bolster public safety and comes in the midst of a focus on crime rates in his bid for a second term. The Democratic governor said yesterday his plan includes shifting all statewide law enforcement officers back to defined pension benefits, funding to upgrade body armor, and boosting training stipends for officers. Public safety has risen to the forefront of Kentucky's gubernatorial campaign. Republican nominee Daniel Cameron's released his own plan to enhance public safety. We'll find out what all is planned for Cincinnati Public School students when they head back to the classroom 1 week from today. The district has a news conference scheduled this morning to talk about back-to-school information, including updates about transportation, enrollment, and the new CPS preschool. Reds are off today after losing to the Marlins yesterday. They open a series with the Pirates tomorrow.
News.
Hello and welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service, coming live from London. This is Owen Bennett-Jones. An Ecuadorian presidential candidate, Fernando Villavicencio, a former journalist well known for speaking out against corruption and drug cartels, has been assassinated. It followed a statement he made last week saying that he and his team had been threatened by the leader of a gang linked to drug trafficking, and a gang called Los Lobos, the Wolves, has claimed responsibility. Well, President Guillermo Lasso said the army would be deployed to ensure elections will go ahead as planned.
Faced with the loss of a Democrat and a fighter, the elections aren't suspended. On the contrary, they have to be held, and democracy has to be strengthened. This is a political crime that has a terrorist character, and we don't doubt that this assassination is an attempt to sabotage the electoral process.
Well, shortly before his death, Mr. Villavicencio vowed to bring an end to corruption if he won.
In this city, we have fought the greatest battles against tyranny. In this city, where we wrote great stories about tyranny. In this city, we are going to write on August the 20th, Election Day, the final story of the triumph of democracy, of the struggle against corruption, against the mafia that have subjugated our homeland for 20 years.
Brave words. Well, one of his friends, Carlos Figueroa, described how he found out about Mr. Villavicencio's death.
I was assisting two patients that arrived injured. I thought Fernando made it out. But when I went to the clinic to help injured patients, I entered the emergency room and I saw Fernando was dead. He didn't have vital signs.
Well, Isabella Ponce is a journalist in Quito and she joins us live now. So can you just tell us about Fernando Villavicencio? He was a journalist and he campaigned basically on the growth of crime and the organized crime in Ecuador.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Fernando Villavicencio was campaigning about that. He was not only a journalist, he was an activist, he was also a syndicalist. He used to work in an oil company many years ago, and he was very outspoken about corruption in the oil industry and also in the former government of Rafael Correa.
Yeah, and how have people reacted to this? It must be a shock.
It's completely a shock because it's the first time this has happened, and we feel confused, sad, angry. So it's a very confusing time for the country, like all the citizens.
Although we should say he didn't, I mean, the opinion polls didn't suggest he was going to win. It's just that he stood out on this issue.
Exactly. He was like in 4th or 5th place. It would depend on the poll. But he was really outspoken the whole time. Before that, he was a congressman, and he was in a commission in which he was also investigating. So the whole time he was investigated, even if he was a congressman or a journalist or an activist.
So is there a feeling in Ecuador that things are going the wrong way? You know, that this sort of crime is going to increase?
Absolutely. Because 3 weeks ago, there was a mayor of one of the major cities that was also murdered. And he was also speaking about this trafficking and gangs. So we don't see like a better or improvement, just like things can get worse.
Right. And is the state strong enough to resist the gangs?
No, absolutely not. Actually, it has only raised in the last year and a half.
Sorry, it's only done what in the last year and a half?
The inability of the state, of the current government to do something about the gangs. We have, in the last 2 years, there have been 500 people murdered in our prisons because of these fights against the gangs between them.
And why do you think it's happening? Why are things going the wrong way in Ecuador?
Well, that's like a very hard question, because it's had a lot of components and context, but it started a long time ago when the prisons are overloaded. Like, there's so much more people that they can handle, and 15-20 years ago we only had like 3 gangs. Now we have no more than 20, because these prisons became like schools for crime, you know. And that also you can relate to international relationships with other countries. There was a base in Manta, in a city that was controlled by the U.S. government, and during Correa they took away that control that was part of the context that I don't want to say they allowed the trafficking, but there was less control.
Okay.
And if you add the COVID pandemic crisis, economic deep crisis, it's a very messy situation, like very complex to understand. There's no one to fight for against the gangs.
Thank you very much for telling us about it. That's Isabella Ponce there. Well, Jeremy McDermott is the co-director of Inside Crime and has more than 2 decades experience reporting from around Latin America. Is it right that Ecuador's become a hub for organised crime?
Give you an idea, in 2020 the murder rate in Ecuador was 7 per 100,000, which in Latin American terms was extremely low. It's now 26 per 100,000 as of last year. We've seen the accelerated evolution of Ecuadorian organised crime, and the country becoming one of the principal departure points for cocaine shipments, particularly bound for Europe.
Why are the drugs people using Ecuador?
Well, first of all, Ecuador's stuck between the 2 major cocaine producers in the world, Colombia to the north and Peru to the south. And it has this large port of Guayaquil, which ships bananas and other things across the globe. And what's been happening, of course, over the last 20 years is any shipments and containers that leave Colombia are, of course, searched exhaustively when they arrive at different ports. But from Ecuador, less so, although, of course, that is changing. And another contributing factor has been the fragmentation of Colombian organized crime and the disappearance of the major cartels, which has prompted Mexicans and indeed European organized crime structures to come and set up in Latin America. And one of the places they've set up is Ecuador, where the currency is the US dollar, and it's easy to come in and out.
Well, you've been following this for years and years, and it just shows you again that the drugs cartels are basically so powerful, and they can bring down whole countries.
The margins are just so huge, Owen. I mean, a kilo of cocaine you can buy in Colombia for between $2,000 and $3,000. You get that to the US, it's worth $25,000. You get it to Antwerp or Rotterdam in the Netherlands or Belgium, it's worth $35,000 to $40,000. You get it to London, it's worth $60,000. There is so much money at stake.
Yeah, and so the prospects for Ecuador are not great, presumably, because Colombia has shown how difficult it is to fight this.
Well, there you go. Colombia's been fighting this for more than 6 decades in different forms, unsuccessfully, in the sense that Colombia is producing more cocaine than ever before. Now, Ecuador is in a far weaker position. It's got weak military and police. It's got a very fragmented political panorama, high levels of corruption, and this is all fertile ground for the drug trafficking organizations, and they have put down deep roots now in Ecuador.
And a marker. I mean, killing a presidential candidate means all the other candidates will not be criticizing the drugs cartels, right?
And this is a complete show of force. If it is proven to be the laws as has been claimed on Ecuadorian social media, this is a direct challenge to the Ecuadorian state, the sort of stuff we haven't seen since the days of Pablo Escobar when he was killing presidential candidates. It is an open defiance.
And that was Jeremy McDermott. Well, to the fire in Hawaii now. One woman there said she went to bed anxious, got up, checked the house, all seemed fine, went back to bed, and then a neighbor rang and said, "Look through your window." She did so and saw a red glow, quickly gathered her husband and 4 children, put them in the car. They got away fine. Others have not been so lucky. Some have had to jump into the sea to escape. Mason Jaffrey suffered burns fleeing the blaze.
I'm a resident of Lahaina for about 18 years, and we just had the worst disaster I've ever seen. All Lahaina is burnt to a crisp, and it's like an apocalypse.
It's like an apocalypse, he says, a huge fire. Well, Daniel Sullivan is a photographer who lives on the island of Maui.
I've never seen anything like this on Maui. It was just a perfect storm of the winds and the drought and the fires. Front Street is hundreds of years old. Those buildings have been there. They're historic, and it's gone. It looks like a bomb went off down there. The fires were all over the island, on every single part of the island. Evacuation shelters where people were staying were having to be evacuated because the fires were coming where the shelters were. It was crazy.
Well, the state's acting governor, Sylvia Luke, said the authorities just weren't prepared for something like this.
We expect rain, sometimes we expect floods. We never anticipated in this state that a hurricane which did not make impact on our islands will cause this type of wildfires. Wildfires that wiped out communities, wildfires that wiped out businesses, wildfires that destroyed homes.
Well, let's hear from a reporter now who's following this. Jared Hill from CBS.
Because of the conditions on the ground, it had been difficult for officials really to get through a significant portion of the island of Maui to be able to tell exactly who was unaccounted for because they were sheltering in a car or a hotel without access to a phone to tell people, or if they had in fact died. While we don't know the circumstances around any of these deaths at this point, it does appear that as they're able to get more onto the island, they're learning more about just the level of destruction here. So there are kind of two things that are happening here. One, there are the efforts to continue putting out these fires, but then there is also this search and rescue mission. There's also an effort here to make sure that the people who have been able to evacuate the island of Maui have somewhere to go so that they can worry as little as possible about people that might be on the island and just try and focus on getting the fire out.
And that was Jared Hill of CBS. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC.
Few clouds and mild tonight, down to 67, and partly cloudy and warmer tomorrow. A high 87, it's 68 now.
Support comes from LG&E and KU, working to build a cleaner, greener future for Kentucky by helping to create more than 100,000 jobs over the last decade and passing along $61 million in customer savings through recycling efforts. Learn more at lge-ku.com/sustainability. Support comes from Bova Furniture. Since 1985, Bova's 20,000 square foot showroom has served the tri-state area with lines of contemporary furniture offering design, quality, and value in mind, helping create living spaces to suit a range of budgets. For design and space inspiration, you can take a virtual tour of the store by visiting bovafurniture.com.
Well, tens of thousands of criminals, many guilty of murder and other serious offences, were recruited in prisons by the Russian mercenary group Wagner to fight in Ukraine. And this is the deal, after 6 months service, if you survive, you can return to your hometown and village free and with convictions quashed, and they're officially regarded as heroes. But as Arseny Sokolov reports, their return is also spreading fear in communities.
A village hall in southern Russia. A young woman in a crazily cotton pink and blue jumpsuit with waist-length brown hair is dancing with a group of excited children. Organizing parties and games for young people is 19-year-old Tatiana Mastyka's first job, and she loves it. But hours after one event like this, back in April, Tatiana was murdered by a gang whose alleged ringleader should have been safely behind bars, serving time for another murder. But he had been let out years earlier to fight in Ukraine, let out and pardoned. Thanks to this man, Yevgeny Prigozhin, founder of the mercenary company Wagner. He told prisons to recruit tens of thousands of convicted murderers, rapists, and robbers. They were used to kill Ukrainians in the bloodiest battles of the war, and many of them lost their lives too. But those who survived have now left Wagner and are walking the streets of Russia again, and in some cases already committing new crimes.
How could you raise your hand against a child? Someone who wasn't threatening you in any way. A child who had just started to live, for whom all doors were open.
That's Nadezhda Pleshkova, the mother of the children's entertainer Tatiana Mastyka. Tatiana's body and that of her boss Kirill Chubko were found buried in woodland in the Krasnodar region in early May. 3 suspects have been arrested in connection with the killing. One of them, Demyan Kevarkyan, who denies any wrongdoing, had already been serving an 18-year sentence for crimes including murder. But he was released after only 6 years to fight in Ukraine. Then, like other criminal recruits, he was free to go home with a pardon.
Let me draw your attention to the word pardon. That's not the same as amnesty.
Olga Romanova is the founder of Russia Behind Bars, an organization campaigning for prison reform.
A pardon is given to an individual personally by the president himself. And the law says it comes after reconciliation with the victim and a good report from prison. None of this happens when Wagner criminals are pardoned. But even so, they can restart their lives with a clean slate.
Indeed, they are officially regarded as heroes. At least 20 serious crimes by former Wagner convicts have been reported. Murders, rapes, grievous bodily harm. But the real number may be greater, because it's now illegal in Russia to discredit anyone involved in what's officially called the Special Military Operation. That law could, in theory, even be used against the police themselves. Large numbers of mourners attended the funerals of the children's entertainers Kirill Chubko and Tatiana Mastyka. And since then, tens of thousands of people in Krasnodar have signed a petition to demand that the chief suspect, Demyan Kevarkyan, gets a life sentence if he is convicted of the murders. But Tatiana's mother, Nadezhda, doesn't think it will have much effect.
Of course, I understand who was responsible for my daughter's death. And I know he had a previous conviction. I'm not stupid. I understand that they won't put him away for life. It's hard for me. Sorry.
In today's Russia, she thinks, the victims of so-called heroes can't expect real justice.
And that was Arseny Sokolov there. And you can hear more from him on this week's edition of Assignment here on the BBC World Service and, of course, on BBC Sounds. New research says that fossil evidence from Mars suggests the planet had wet and dry seasons, which could have provided ideal conditions for life. Now, this all raises lots of questions, so I've been consulting William Rapin, a research scientist on this project. It's an international collaboration between NASA and the French Centre for Space Studies. First of all, how do you go about finding a fossil on Mars?
We really got surprised the day we arrived. We methodically explored specific area on Mars. We all understood there was something different that we hadn't seen before. The ground had this striking pattern of hexagons at the surface, and when examining some of the blocks, we saw that it's not just a surface feature, it's part of the rock itself. We know this kind of columnar structure on the ancient soil, they are related to the seasons. If you subject a mud to wet and dry cycles, it's going to crack, and if it's repeated, the cracks are forming perfect hexagon that propagate vertically. So this pattern is diagnostic of that climate for a sustained duration. We count the thickness, we think about thousands up to maybe millions of years involved in that formation that we found on Mars.
Why would it make a difference to the existence of life that there are seasons?
Right now, the emergence of life itself, where did it appear on Earth? Actually, that's the only data point we have so far, is a mystery. But in the lab, we've been exploring theories to explain that organic material can self-organize into living beings. They've shown that if you have water and you need organic material, you need some rocks, because rocks provide elements. If you subject this to cycling, then simple organic materials will self-assemble into larger compounds. These scientists in the lab have even been able to show that RNA can spontaneously appear, be generated and accumulate in this kind of environment. So a molecule that did not exist before, a molecule useful for life itself. It's, RNA is at the basis of genetic transmission and evolution for any living things on Earth. And so these environments spontaneously generate. It's one of the only way we've seen in the lab to make that. And so now we have another planet like Mars that has this process. It's the cycling equilibria between dry and wet condition that triggers the molecule to combine.
Do you think there was life on Mars?
This is a hot topic. We don't have scientific evidence that there was life from our Earth standard. And I think this is a loaded question for us, the Earthlings, because our definition of life is Earth-based. And now with that discovery, we have some good scientific hints that we can go to another planet like Mars and explore its sedimentary memory to see what happened. What is this odyssey at the molecular level that can lead to life forms? Life on Earth is extremely specific. Maybe in other contingencies leads to other life forms. So Mars, even if life did not arise earlier, like if it evolved, we have the memory of early primordial processes that could have led to proto-life. So at the molecular level, we have this memory on Mars that we can in the future go and access.
Yeah, I think you're saying Earthlings shouldn't be Marsist. Would that be? I think that's what you're saying.
We have a good hint now that we can study our origins on Mars sedimentary record and even explain how life can appear in the first place.
And there we are, that was William Rapin with more of all that amazing information coming down from Mars as the scientists analyse it. You're listening to NewsHour on the World Service of the BBC. Super long day. Okay.
You're the executive producer behind this film. You guys have been working together for a while. Take us back to the kind of first meeting of you guys. When do you remember first meeting Martin Scorsese?
Oh, when I first met him, he had just made a movie called Mean Streets. And John Taplin, who was the road manager for the band, when he left, he said, I'm going out in the world, I'm going to produce movies. So anybody who says that, you think, oh, great, well, good luck with that, right? And he went and he produced Mean Streets. And he says to me, listen, he said, there's this director, this guy that I'm working with, I think he's really quite amazing.
Newsweek said, Mean Streets triumphantly heralds the arrival of Martin Scorsese.
He was a kid, right?
Yeah, everybody was young. And he said, and there's an actor in this movie. Oh my God, he's as good as any actor you've ever seen. It's really something. So they set up a screening for me to see it. And after I saw the movie, Marty came to the screening room and said hello to me. And it was wonderful to meet him right after seeing his work and seeing what he did in this movie, and Bob De Niro and Harvey Keitel, they did in these early days and everything, and it was just overflowing with talent. So when I met Marty, I was like, whoa, this is, and the use of music in it, everything. So it really stuck with me. And then when it came time that I was trying to figure out who would be good to direct The Last Waltz, because of this special thing that I felt with Marty's connection to music, I thought, I want to start with him. I want to see if he'd be interested in this. And, you know, the rest is a beautiful story.
Was it a hard sell?
It was a tough sell because he was in the middle of directing a movie.
What one?
It's called New York, New York. And when you're directing a movie, the studios hate it when you go and direct another movie at the same time. They really, really don't like it. So we had to do this all underground and everything. And in the beginning, he said, I'm in the middle of doing this movie. They're not going to let me do this. And then as we talked about the different artists that were going to be in the film, at the concert and everything, over the course of the evening, finally, he threw his arms in the air and says, I don't care. They can fire me. They can kill me. I don't care. I've got to do this. So I was like, okay, because I just felt, it's one of those things in my gut. I just...
Morning exercising. Who would have believed...
That's nice. That's the second movement of the Symphony No. 6 by Francois Joseph Gossec. That was Matthias Vanrix and the London Mozart Players.
WGUC goes wherever you do. Listen to 90.9 online at iHeartRadio.com and on your mobile device through the iHeartRadio app.
Support comes from Frond, a woman-owned plant shop featuring a large selection of thoughtfully curated plants, as well as candles, books, handmade jewelry, and their own hand-poured planter pots in dozens of shapes and sizes. Located in the Westwood Town Hall District at 3126 Harrison Avenue. More info and shop hours on Facebook and Instagram at Shop Frond.
The great cellist Yo-Yo Ma believes that music has the power to generate trust and understanding because it can stimulate the imagination and reinforce our humanity. Every week on Sunday Baroque, you'll hear music and musicians, people like Yo-Yo Ma, who demonstrate the power and humanity of music. I'm Suzanne Bona, host of Sunday Baroque, here for you every week from 8 till noon on Classical 90.9 WGUC.
Felix Mendelssohn had an idea for a violin concerto for his violin-playing friend, Ferdinand David. He was also a collaborator on this. David was instrumental in helping him with certain sections of the violin part. Violinist Hilary Hahn says different orchestras find different emotions in the same passages.
It's one of those things where the collaboration has a lot to do with where those moments happen. So the particular tonal qualities of a certain section of the orchestra may lend themselves in one orchestra to a calm section in one area of the music, but with another orchestra, that same section sounds ominous. So then you find another pocket of the piece where you can find that calm moment.